when I say, because it's interesting, somebody who loves you, the representation,
Yeah.
it doesn't reach.
It can a little bit, and then
it bounces back.
Yeah, because we're in love. You're going to have that bias and say, I'm good.
So you don't trust that? You don't Kevin!
We used to work together.
So, okay, are you taking my word seriously?
Yeah, I am a little bit.
Okay, a little.
But
okay, how would it be if I give you a task you have to do it? If I order you?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I'm going to use this. I'm sorry, I don't get it. I'm going to be the dictator.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, this is what you have to do. Would that feel better?
I know.
Well, then, come on now. Kevin, you talk like money. Can you think of it as...
Yeah, I don't mind doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what I think about what I do isn't positive all the time. Yeah, so whatever.
Okay, maybe.
But I'll do it. So what I like to do, Marcella, whatever I'm scared of, I'll just do it. Even if I think I'm shit at it, I'll do it. Yeah. Just because I can't let that fear take me over.
How about what sort of, because you're saying that it's positive, maybe it may not feel positive for you. How about the others? Like for us, like for me, it's already, as I said, 5%.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that.
So if you think that actually you could do something positive, whoever that is, whether that is in in doing this, what you do today, training somebody or helping them get a little bit of less of anxiety and to feel more prepared to do for something what they're going to do for the first time. If you think about, let me help.
Yeah, that's sort of at the forefront. Yeah. But whether I'm helping in a good way or not, I still don't know sometimes. It's like with the clients, alright, some of my clients will stay with me, but then I question why they stay with me, so I've always got this insecurity about certain things that some people won't see on the surface. They think, Kevin's alright, he can talk in front of people who does this. But sometimes they don't know. I'm thinking, fuck this. Yeah, I'm scared of shit up here. Do I know what I'm talking about? Do I know anything about this stuff really? So I always question myself about things. But there's an unhealthiness to it and there's a healthiness to it. Because I wouldn't want to learn more. And part of it, like I was saying to Colin, the inferiority complex that black people have had, they've been conditioned to feel a certain way. So I know when I was in the workplace, when we was working together, while some other white workers didn't have to dress up, I had to dress for the part. I had to operate in a certain way because I felt that I wasn't good enough, because I've been told that in different ways for decades. So yeah, it's a bit complex, but it's all right.
Here we are.
Yes.
Here we are. Yeah.
That's recording.
Ready?
So, yeah, when you're ready, bro.
All right. Welcome today, young people of the planet Earth. Please relax and close your eyes and just think of your breath and the feelings in your body. What's going on today? Alright, I'm wondering if the energy's low in here today, because that was a bit low. Let's try it one more time. Alright, relax. So we're here for the third week of Black History. Today there will be a recap to start over the stuff that we went through last week, and then we will look at the migration out of Africa, and migration around Africa. We may have a short discussion if we've got time. And also we may, as I gave you an intro to Nubia, or Tarseti or Kush, we'll start at the early beginnings of when there was excavation and what they found, and we'll go into how that civilization developed. So, again, for the start, the lesson guidelines, we have to be respectful. Please respect others' experiences, etc. Please be honest as you can in here. Please be understanding, and also be reflective, empathetic, and sensitive. So, and if there's any information, and it shouldn't be too much this week, that makes certain feelings emerge where you feel uncomfortable, please leave the room if you need to. So, we're just going to go for a recap, and then afterwards I'm going to give you a piece of paper to do a little writing. So, we looked at the birthplace of humankind, Africa. Then we looked at pre-humans. I said to you that there were over 20 pre-humans, different strains of pre-humans, going as far back as 14 million years ago with Kenopithecus, all the way to 350 to 250,000 years ago with the emergence of Homo sapiens, us. The Ice Age came 2.5 million years ago, and the only place, one of the only places that sort of wasn't that affected by the Ice Age was Africa, but it became affected after a while because of climate change, because of the Ice Age, and the sub-Saharan desert emerged and it became more arid and dry. And these African people had to move to places where there was more fertile land and water. The development of communities became more complex over time, and pharaonic systems emerged, and they had at the bottom slaves and servants, and those kings and queens, famous kings and queens, like Amina, like Queen Hatshepsut, and also great kings like Zoscales, the Axumite king, and Nama from Egypt. There was great developments in Africa that have not been talked about or recognised over the years throughout history. So whether it was in astronomy, paper, the development of paper, the development of the calendar, mathematics, etc. There was great achievements there. Then soon after, because of capitalism, the gun, and also the ship, slavery started because of the world fight for economic wealth. After slavery, though, the abolition of slavery came about, and a lot of people say that, oh yes, the English abolished slavery when that first happened in 1806 with the slave trade, and then later on in 1833 with slavery itself. But however, it was revolts and abolitionists, so a lot of revolts in Haiti, a lot of revolts in Jamaica, Trinidad and Barbados, that was happening. And also abolitionists like William Wilberforce, John Brown and Granville Sharp contributed to the freedom of black people. Then came, because even though there was freedom, there was still no rights for black people. They still couldn't vote, they couldn't get certain housing, they didn't have access to certain jobs. So people were moving forward in fighting a good cause through the civil rights movement to try and establish at the time some sense of equality. But what emerged out of all that was black excellence. So we had the emergence of black doctors, black billionaires, black scientists, black politicians, authors, and I don't know what's going on with this today, where it's not working well, but that's okay. Black musicians, sports personalities, etc. So the contents are as follows, but today we're on week 3, so we'll be looking at the human development in Africa, migration out of Africa. So, have you been told the truth? We highlighted that there's been a lot missing from history, just history in its holistic sense, not black history. That's emerged out of the fact that that history was suppressed and destroyed. But we've been provided with his story, a different story of history. Now, we identified last week that we've been made to think in a certain way and we've been lied to. So whether it's the feelings that people have that white people are superior and black people are inferior, whether you've been given the notion that slaves built the pyramids, whether you think that black people didn't contribute anything to the development of the human race. A lot of these falsities have been stuck in our head as a consequence of the narrative that's been provided to us over hundreds of years. Creating a black psychological binary made up of two main components, opposing components. So, we have white, and what's the opposite? And this is the way that, probably some people would say it would be a schizoid split, and it is to some extent. And what's the opposite of good? And then we have the slave master. And then we have beautiful. Yes, and remember that, there's some people that we've been primed to think this way, that white is beautiful and black is ugly. And we have the colonizer and the colonized. We have the intelligent. And we have the unintelligent. We have the majority. And we have the minority. And we have the law-abiding citizen and the lawbreaker. So distinct split and divergence in the way we think about black and white and their characteristics and their qualities as a consequence of these narratives. And this is played out for years in our thinking and the way we interact with people on a daily basis. And everything surrounding white is wholly positive, and everything regarding blacks has been seen and felt to be wholly negative. So, there's also words. What is going on with this screen today? My clicker's not working, so I might go manually. The binary explored may lie deep within the unconscious of many people, affecting the way people interact with you. Feelings of superiority have developed and been underpinned by social, political, and historical narratives. But imagine if negative feelings regarding black people are further compounded by the use of words. So it's strange because if someone's trying to exploit you in a certain way, it's strange that they would call it blackmail. Now, what does that bring up for people when they hear that word and use that word on a regular basis? And also that in such a negative practice, it also sounds like you're talking about a male black with black male. Black sheep of the family, that's always bad. A black cat, that'll give you some bad luck. And if you're on the blacklist, you're blacklisted. So there are words that have been used over time that give you a feeling that anything black is bad. So we looked at the lens that provides a description of who we are, this narrow, distorted and harmful lens that's portrayed through the media of how black people are as gang members, as drug dealers, drug takers. They're angry, over-sexualized, living in poverty, absent fathers, single mothers that are very angry because black women are always supposed to be angry, problematic students, and as you know they're problematic because the statistics show that they're 2 to 3 times more likely to receive exclusions. But is that because they're bad, or is that because of some unconscious bias? They can only be rappers and musicians and sports personalities. So, we spoke about, what's his name again?
Who's the person in the picture?
Yeah,
Spike
Lee. Sorry, even his name's up there. There's something going on with my memory today. Yeah, and the quote that he said, I think black people have to be in control of their own image because we've been force-fed a narrative that to a certain extent we believe and sometimes exist in and live. Because film is a powerful medium, we can't just sit back and let other people define our existence. And to a certain extent, living in societies that are dominated in a certain way by systemic racism and institutional racism. We have to fit in, and also we're also primed to think that we are something through the lens of the media. So we looked at the negative social phenomena that black people have to deal with on a daily basis, and maybe not everyone acknowledges that. People live different existences. Some black people don't believe that the police are institutional racists, but they may not have had the experiences that I might have had with the police. So that's not their fault because their experience is different. But some people, especially when they read a lot or they've got friends that have experienced some of these things like adultification, alienation, brutalization, etc., they have a different way of interacting with people and they look at society in a different way. But it has a profound impact on black people having to deal with these things maybe on a daily basis. So if you're going through demonisation, discrimination, infantilisation, dealing with macro instead of microaggressions on a daily basis, it can lead to black fatigue, black rage. And some people wonder and think sometimes, why are black people upset? If you go from a timeline from 1441 to present day, and you look at the history of black people and the atrocities they've gone through and continue to go through after a point in time when there were supposed to be laws in place to give them some sense of equality, and that hasn't been achieved. How are people going to feel about that when they still feel like they're constantly stepped on, even though we've come to a place where we've come out of slavery? Low self-esteem, low confidence, issues with self-identity, and a lot of health-related issues black people are suffering from. And COVID was a prime example of that, because in certain countries and continents, whether in Africa or the Caribbean, and Arlene Geronimus talks about this lady that's put forward something called weathering theory, that says that you get worn down, become more susceptible as a consequence of dealing with these societal phenomena on a daily basis. And when COVID hit, whether it was in America and England, because of the social pressures, black people were suffering and experiencing and having to deal with the consequence of getting COVID, while in places where those societal pressures weren't evident, in Africa and the Caribbean, black people weren't contracting COVID on that level. So there seemed to be a parallel between how you're existing in a certain country and the pressures you're facing on a daily basis, and you getting sick, and in countries where you're not facing these societal pressures and your health is a lot better. So we learned about the reasons why black history is beneficial for self-identity, for self-esteem, for your self-concept, etc. So that was our recap, and here are a few questions that you can answer just to enhance your learning. So the first one, historically, what are some of the lies that have been told to distort the manner in which other people perceive the role of black people in history, and also contribute towards how black people perceive themselves? I gave an example. Ancient Africans passed on their history onto future generations through oral tradition. That was a lie. They didn't only do that. We know that in Tarseti or Nubia or Kush they had Meroitic script, in Ethiopia they had Ge'ez, and in Egypt they had hieroglyphics, so they did do writing. Also, we know that black people aren't inferior to white people, but we've been fed that narrative. So what are some of the lies that have been told throughout history? I'll just continue talking while you're writing. So number 2, give examples of the psychological binary that has been developed as a result of the political, social, historical and biological narrative. So we looked at that. So the binary, slave and slave master, civilized, uncivilized.
I didn't even know that concept.
Yeah, I haven't got mine either.
You can take it home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, question 3, the media has provided harmful, narrow and distorted view of black people. Provide examples of how black people are perceived in the media. The drug dealers, the criminals, etc. Question 4, there are a range of negative societal phenomena that black people experience in society and have to deal with sometimes on a daily basis. Name as many as you can. You have to deal with racism, adultification, and other ones. So name as many of those as you can. Question 5, what impact has these societal phenomena had on black people as a consequence of having to deal with these frequently? So, establishing a feeling of low self-esteem is one of the consequences of that. Question 6, what are the benefits of learning black history? One of them is the development of a more resilient sense of self. And the last one is really just for you to finish off the sentence. According to Dr. Henry Gates Jr., the roots of every family trace back to where? And according to the Natural History Museum, scientists are sure that Homo sapiens first evolved where?
Kevin, I know with the question 6,
Yeah.
when you ask the benefits of learning, you know, like the example, yeah, it's for someone who's black, yeah, someone who's white.
True, good, good,
because-
excellent. Yes, I know what you mean.
Because I must
Yes.
say it feels
Yeah, I
for
know.
me
Yeah,
very much. Okay, I keep thinking of my children.
yeah,
I keep thinking of my children. That for them is to enhance and uplift. You know, when you said that, list how many, you know, of the what is it? The
those phenomena.
yeah, the 4. Because most likely they will experience.
Yes.
Yeah. For me, okay, I'm white, but I'm a foreigner, so sometimes I do experience some sort of
Yeah.
racial issue, but not to the extent
No.
as yourselves and my children. Now with this question, because there's not only benefit for black people.
Yeah, I know, it's the sort of crush stereotypes.
It
And
really opens a different areas. And I think the area is of that the lights get smaller. The light and truth, which can be quite hard, because then there was a moment when I thought, okay, and it comes with the inferiority, because then I'm starting to feel. And it was when you put that black male, and I looked how do we say it in my own language? Yeah, it's not the same. And I thought that's Western.
Yes.
That's Western. We have completely different terminology. It has nothing to do with black. Some of the other times we don't use the translation is very different. But that is because it's a Europe, like Russia, and
Yes.
a different part of the world. So to get to the point, there is a benefit, and a very important benefit for someone of different race.
Yeah, of course. That's
to-
good that you brought that up.
Because it felt very focused.
Yes, yeah.
It does. I have to
Yeah.
kind of highlight it.
Yeah, no, because in certain writing that I've done, I highlight that, but I haven't highlighted it here. And I probably would have forgotten about it if you'd not talked about it.
So, because I really I want to, I feel like I don't even plan anything now. I want to be here. Okay. Yeah. So I feel there's a benefit. I'm going to benefit me.
Yeah.
And it's not. And something when you asked last week, and I said the difference. You know, like I said, you know, different. But I'm becoming after the first session. I can't equality. I feel like yes, but how to conquer the inequality without anyone feeling inferior. Because I must admit there was a moment of fear when you showed the picture, and I can feel how people were suppressed, and made to believe that they cannot, they don't have the mental capacity, like the intelligence, skills, and whatever. Like you were fed, and then it was shoved down your mouth, and then you start to believe and act. So there was a moment when I thought, well, actually no, you know, everybody has a talent, everybody has something to bring, because you know, I may be good at something, you may be, and I may not be good at what you are, in that way. But I thought, you know, the fear of becoming inferior. That kind of, because would that go the other way? That, let's say, black people would come to the top, and then would that be reversed? Or is there something of more depressive position in terms of, like, there is bad in me, there's a good in me, but the acceptance and kind of that ability to mourn that you have something what I don't have. You know, it's really making me to think quite deeply.
That's good. That's good. It's making me think deeply. Right, let's move on. Thank you, Marcella. Give her a round of applause, because that made me think very deeply. Right, so we established, if people don't believe that Africa is the birthplace of humankind, of humanity. Now we're going to look a bit into human development in Africa and migration out of Africa. So we went through this last week, and they're doing all kinds of anthropological digs and finds, and still finding that human existence goes back even further than 14 million years ago. They're finding ruins that are dated back to maybe, let's say, 20 million years ago or 25 million years ago. So there's still these ideas that humankind may have existed well past when Kenopithecus emerged 40 million years ago. But these pre-humans, and some people have different thoughts about this, because some people really believe in the Bible and don't believe on an evolutionary standpoint. They just start with the Bible narrative of Adam and Eve. But I'm not coming with anything that's going against religion. I'm just going with historical, anthropological and archaeological information. So it's not religious bashing in here today. So 40 million years ago we had Kenopithecus, then we had Australopithecus ramadas, then Australopithecus afrensis, and Australopithecus africanus, and then Australopithecus robustus, then bosi. But what happened? Unfortunately, all of these died out. Strangely enough, and maybe because they hadn't developed enough to continue on this planet. So they died out, but then a new stock emerged. So then we had Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and then finally we popped on the scene, Homo.
So can they see some, have they found some
bones? Yes.
From
all of these, yeah. So some of the most famous sort of paleoanthropologists from back in the day, Dr. Louis Leakey and his wife Mary Leakey. So this one here, which they called Lucy, after a Beatles song, they found the bones. So there's a lot of different paleoanthropologists that have found bones and pieced them together and done their dating and found out how far back these beings existed. So, 2.5 million years ago was the Ice Age. Now there was a difference in regards to what was happening in different parts of the world in regards to the Ice Age. We know that it came about as a consequence of a perfect storm of cosmic cycles, moving continents and changing climates. So the Ice Age didn't just happen, it was a consequence of that. But Africa was a lot different than other regions of the planet. So where you might have been in Europe and there were ice glaciers, that was only happening maybe at mountaintop regions, maybe in Ethiopia, high up, but there wasn't really a lot of ice in Africa. It hadn't been affected like other parts of the world. So, while in Europe and Asia were dodging glaciers, the story in Africa was completely different. Africa was a region that was least affected by the Ice Age and continued to flourish with wet grasslands, creating perfect conditions for the evolution of wildlife, including great apes, gorillas and pre-humans. So if you ever look at the sort of pictures, not actually photos, but the paintings or drawings of Sahara back, say, 11,700 years ago when the Ice Age ended, you'll see those pictures where there were animals and grassland in the Sahara. Early hominids began to develop complex behaviours, crafting stone into hand axes, enabling them to cut meat, work skins for wearing and carve wood. So, it's funny because 90,000 to 60,000 years ago is a point in time that's sort of dated, and we've got to think about dates in this respect. Dates aren't, in regards to history, not all the dates are definite. So someone might say the slave trade started in 1441, someone say it started in 1444. So even with the migration out of Africa, it's sort of an approximation. Some people will say that Homo sapiens migrated out of Africa 70,000 years ago, and someone will put a wider date, 90,000 years ago to 60,000 years ago. Now, a lot of people will say that that happened between 90 to 60,000 years ago, but migration out of Africa happened a lot earlier, and it happened also with Homo erectus. So Homo erectus, 2 million years ago, had decided to go across the globe and go where they were going and meet up with some of our other descendants that existed in other parts of the globe. So, who did our early ancestors meet when they left Africa? Well, they did meet some other ancestors around the place. So, Homo erectus and Homo sapiens met up with some of our other descendants. Homo neanderthalensis. I always have problems because of my list. Say it.
Homo neanderthalensis.
Yes, and also Homo heidelbergensis. That's always a problem with saying that. Yeah. That was in Europe. So they met those descendants in Europe, and then in Asia they met Florensis and Longi in Asia. So there were different types of hominids across the globe that existed. This is one interesting part that some people might not know. Sharing the landscape with our genetic cousins also led to them getting intimate. So whether it was Homo erectus or Homo sapiens, they did have some interaction with the Neanderthals and they did get down. And as a consequence of that, to this day, primarily Europeans and Asians have 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. It's funny because they say that black Africans and Caribbeans haven't got any, but there's new findings that they've got 0.1% Neanderthal DNA. But before that, those are some new findings, they're still exploring that. But Europeans and Asians have got Neanderthal DNA inside of them. Right, development of African communities, so around 10,000 years ago, and remember we're thinking about the Sahara more than anywhere else, around that region there, say Central Africa to a certain extent. There was a lush, flourishing grassland that was nice with animals. And people were developing their communities. So there was things going on like the development of pot making and pottery around 10,000 years ago, and that enabled them to store food. And around 8,000 years, they started to domesticate animals and herd animals. And then they sort of broke off into two types of communities: the cattle-dependent nomadic pastoralists that used to travel around and herd their animals, and the more settled people that built permanent shelters and stayed in a community. But as time continued, chiefs emerged. As the communities got more complex, there was a need to manage and organise people so that they could herd cattle and also carry out raids. Because even though there was this raiding practice going on among other communities, it still didn't operate in the same way as the English feudal system. There was no one at the top, the lord of the manor, and the serfs there, sort of like slavery, and under the lord of the manor having to do work. It wasn't that sort of social structure. Elites prospered and amassed wealth, and in order to protect it, armies formed and strategic alliances were made. So I'm hoping you're getting an idea of what was going on in Africa after the Ice Age. So it was nice there. They started developing communities. They learned how to make pottery and store food. They also learned how to domesticate animals, and chiefs arose as they became more complex, these communities. So, climate and movement throughout Africa. The Ice Age had a significant impact on Africa's climate, turning significant parts of Africa into a desert. That's when things started to change, and the ancient Africans then began to relocate and move out of those areas and closer to the Nile Valley, where there was fertile land. And if you know, the blue and white Nile creates a really great soil, and there's water, and that's why agriculture was so big in those early ancient African kingdoms. So, meanwhile, outside of Africa, so we know that they travelled out. So we see Homo sapiens had made their way out to all different parts of the globe. They had the Neanderthalers, I won't say it, can you say it really nicely?
I can't see that right.
That's all right. We're saying the Neanderthals, yeah? They were existing in certain parts in the yellow. And Homo erectus had moved out, and I said that they had moved out and migrated out about 2 million years ago. So they were moving about, and there was a lot of interaction between them.
Kevin,
So-
at this stage, would the land plate be one piece?
It would have been more together
Yeah.
for them to be able to move,
That's
because
what
they weren't in ships.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't in ships at that stage.
So,
So the
if-
land mass would have been, for
yeah.
them to be able to move, it would have been more together. So, right, we talked about 90,000 to 60,000 years ago, Homo sapiens moved out. So, we're going to just think quickly about adaptation through natural selection. There's always been this preoccupation with skin, a lot of the time, more than anything else, and differences in how people look. Black people have been subject to a lot of negative criticism over the years because of black skin, flat noses, and other traits that they sort of compared to monkeys on a biological level.
Kevin, I do want to say something because I've never heard this. Like what you just said, the description, where I come from, we haven't.
Okay.
But, and I say but, after the communism failed, I have heard, like my people from my country, when there was a football match, that they would use this description.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I heard it here, like when I came. So it's interesting when you say, because I feel kind of this difference in how people, like the way how we were taught, like the way I was born in Czechoslovakia. We were not taught the way, the language you use.
Yeah.
and I never forget, even like my geographical teacher, they always, like, they spoke with admiration. So when my father came to this country, he thanked me, thank you, because I was able to see the first black man.
Yeah.
That there was like, but it wasn't in a kind of like, oh, it's some, I don't know if you know what I'm trying to say. It was different.
Yeah.
But I felt the difference once I came here.
Yes.
But also I feel it now in my countries when we starting to be westernized.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's I mean, me and Neville have had conversations previously, especially about Russia's portrayal of Africa and how they felt about Africa. And they held Africa in high esteem for a very long time.
but that's what I mean, because that's what I'm not here, and I'm like I'm aware because I came, I came with that kind of ideology, but it's not my route, if you know what.
Yeah.
Because for us, and I highlight, as a communist. I was the first 15, 16 years of my life. It's a very different political regime. And
Stateless, cashless society. I know.
But honestly, like if anyone would come and study, and I'll never forget these images, like two black men, they were studying to be doctors. Everyone wanted to be their girlfriend, everybody wanted to be their friend. And when I meet these people, because I met two people, they studied in Czech Republic and Bratislava. They said it was the best time. They felt loved, they felt welcome. Very different. So I'm kind of like, is there something very historically, like West? Some people come from.
Definitely, yes. I mean, some people have said that. They had slavery in America happening in America. That didn't happen really in England. They left that to where they're colonized, to the West Indies, etc. But people have said that the home of racism, some theorists and some social commentators have said that England is actually the home of racism. And I think it's because at one time, especially after the war, the Spanish War of Succession in 1719, and they got something called the Asiento de Negro. That was like the mobile phone contract, but it was a contract for slavery. So they owned half of the slave trade, and the slave trade was big. But from that moment on, England was fully immersed in slavery and had the theoretical ideas of how to keep black people suppressed and in slavery, and contributed towards that in America as well. American slavers got information from London about what to do with certain things.
Oh, I want to just say, because I have noticed that, like my country now, they really take a lot of ideas from UK, whether that's education, anything.
Yeah.
And I have noticed that the people who are in Terrago they not like, their mind is different. I hear it, okay? Like my children come and I see they treat them different. Like it's there, okay? I'm not going to say it's not in my country, it is. So I just, because there was right in the beginning, it's like spreading, the spreading.
Yeah, a virus.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That is right. So, let's move on quickly before we come to the end. Right, as our ancestors travelled out of Africa to Europe and Asia, adaptation took place as a result of environmental factors. There was changes going on with the human condition biologically over thousands of years. And even though in 1681, that was the starting point for the differentiation between black and white people in Maryland, Virginia, when they first in law used the word white to separate black and white people. That's what we know now. People don't understand that really we're the same people. Some with more melanated skin and some with less melanated skin. There's no real difference, but over time, people's physical features changed and things changed as a consequence of their environment. So, skin pigmentation and UV radiation. So, high levels of melanin serve as protection from UV radiation, preventing folate deficiency. So if you was living in Africa, where the sunlight was bright, your melanated skin really protected you. But what was the disadvantage? As humans moved to northern latitudes, that melanated skin wasn't good. Dark skin blocked the UV rays necessary for the body to synthesize vitamin D. So as Homo sapiens travelled out, there had to be a change. Otherwise they would have been suffering from a deficiency. Skin pigmentation, what was the advantage? Populations in Europe and Northern Asia evolved lighter skin to maximise their vitamin D absorption in low light environments. So there had to be a change in skin pigmentation, because how would they have survived otherwise, if not through that adaptation?
Okay, I have a question. So if, like, for yourself, because I think my question is bigger, but how does it feel if actually, in essence, the black person has moved and was losing that?
Mm-hmm.
How does that make you feel? That if you realize that actually that's me turning lighter?
Yeah, I think
Because there's some, because straight away I was thinking, well, of course, and that I knew this long time ago, that it's only if I end up living, this wouldn't be mine.
Yeah.
I would be pretty, close to you.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, how does that? Because we're talking about, history, past, the evolution, and how does that make? Because the same person turns against you, or that kind of, my brain is,
Yeah, I think that I've thought about it in different ways, Marcella.
Yeah.
For me, just understanding this history a bit more and identifying how people can be racist and demonstrate high levels of discrimination, etc. I understand how much history has contributed to them, not because the things have been taken out of history and people have been fed a lie. Everyone on this planet, white people, black people, if you want to call us all that, white people have been given a narrative in their head that makes them feel superior as a consequence of having white skin. And then hearing that their skin may have originally been black,
so
they don't want to hear that.
what sprang to my mind is a loss.
That's right, a lack. Yeah, a lack, yeah.
There's a loss,
Yeah.
lack, something what I had, but it's gone. Yeah, I lost
Yeah.
it.
So,
And that's a quite...
yeah, it's a hard thing to swallow, especially when you've already got pre-existing racist ideologies
Yes.
in your head. It doesn't feel comfortable, that dissonance, and then you have to validate it by saying something. All right, I'm superior, I'm white. So I don't need to think about that. That's the way I feel better. And for black people that understand history a bit more, they'll understand that for a lot of people that are considered to be white, it's not their fault that they're thinking like that.
So there's a lot of because for me, straight away, I was feeling this humble, feeling like I lost something what I had and I can't retrieve it. Yeah, I can't retrieve it back. Although I am coming from there, but
Yes.
there's not, I'm making my children look.
And tell you the truth, Marcella.
But I think that's the unconscious.
Yes. Yeah.
Already.
Yeah, of course,
because
of course.
I'll never forget, and I don't, possibly that is because as I said, you guys were celebrated like in my year when I was young. So when I saw their dad, it was like strong, healthy, because we are much more weak. I knew that we had more illnesses, and I wanted to have healthy children. But that on a conscious level, it's a completely different story.
Yeah.
But I'm talking like
Unconscious, yeah.
yeah.
That's right. So let me move on. We've got 5 minutes. While lighter skin prevents rickets, it increases the risk of skin damage in high UV environments. So, body shape. So we know that lighter skin and darker skin play the role. One, darker skin in protection, and lighter skin to be able to absorb vitamin D. So as Homo sapiens moved out to northern areas, they had to adapt to survive, but in different ways. So also in regards to body shape and thermoregulation. So in colder climates, bodies adapted to climate. Stockier builds with shorter limbs help reduce the surface area to volume ratio, helping them retain heat. So even your size over time changed, just for survival purposes. Nasal morphology. So what happened with the nose? The nose changed. In cold climates, humans evolved. Humans evolved narrower noses, which help moisten and warm the air before it reaches the lungs. So there's a reason why people have got that shaped nose, because they had to. Eye shape and insulation. And you know, it's funny when I looked at this back in the day, and people will look at people from Asia and the shape of their eyes and wonder, how come their eyes are shaped like that? Well, there's a specific reason. Epicanthic fold on the eyes, recognizing the adaptation to extreme cold in Central and North Asia. The fold adds a layer of fatty tissue, providing insulation for the eye and sinuses behind it, protecting them from freezing temperatures. Even more so, like with Inuits, the sun, the snow, the glare of the snow. So there had to be adaptation to save their eyes. Eye shape and UV glare. Narrower eye shapes are recognized as an adaptation, limiting the amount of blinding UV glare entering the pupil. So, or whether it was the skin, whether it was the nose, or whether it was the eyes, adaptation took place as a mechanism of survival. Depigmentation. When did humans lose their melanin? How long ago did African people transform? How long ago? 2 million years ago? 100,000 years ago? Maybe 12,000 to 8,000 years ago? So between 12,000 and 8,000 years, depigmentation took place. So it isn't that long ago.
Yeah, well, that's not that long.
So the emergence of what we would call white people didn't happen that long ago, really. And there are some genes that contributed to that, SLC24A5 and SLC. I'm not a geneticist, but those are two of the main genes that contributed to depigmentation. There are lots of other genes out there that do different things in regards to eye colour and hair colour, etc. But in regards to skin pigmentation, these played a major role in that depigmentation process. So, we were going to go on to looking at Sudan and Nubia, Tarsetio, Kush. I did talk about where Nubia was located in southern Egypt and northern Sudan. I did talk about, I think, the first king of Nubia, King Kashta. I did talk about the queens being called Candice or Candake. I talked about their writing in Meroitic, such as the Victory Stella, the Memphite Theology, and Shabaka texts, and the great wars that they had with the Romans, especially with Amaderes, the warrior, one-eyed queen, who backed down the Romans and got this gold statue head and buried it just to show her defiance. But our time has run out, and we will look at Nubia in greater detail next week, from the beginnings of archaeological digs in 1962 that showed that maybe, even though Egypt's seen as the most illustrious kingdom in Africa, Nubia were influential and probably predated Egypt by about 3,000 years. And that's a wrap, my friends.
Kevin, next week I'm away. I'm going to see my dad.
Okay.
Cancer.
Yeah.
But I want. Can I be part of like Zoom? Not Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah. No problem. Thank you for coming. Yay! I hope you got something from that. We were gonna have a little discussion.
Change that clock as well because it's confusing me.
Oh yeah. I was going to ask you some questions, and we we're going to have a debate about these questions. So I was going to say, do you believe that black people exist? W.E.B. Du Bois said that there's a dual consciousness that black people have. Amos N. Wilson said that black people live in a schizoid existence between black and white. Do you believe that's the case? Do black people, and Frantz Fanon in Black, I always get the title wrong, White Faces, Black Mask, White Faces, in his literature about black people existing in society, not only as being black, but because of their colonial journey, they also exist wanting to be white and adhering to white practices. And it's harder for black people at a middle class level that have ascended into white institutions in a certain way and have wealth, how hard it is for them to maintain or retain their black identity while trying not to be over white or be seen as white sometimes, even though they still want to retain their blackness. You think that's something that's true? Do you believe that ancient aliens helped the ancient African people in the development of their civilizations? Because there's a lot of talk about aliens coming down, maybe the Anunnaki, however you want to pronounce it, and then helping the construction of pyramids and the development of humankind. There's a lot of people like Billy Carson will talk about that. The other question was, how do you feel civil rights, race relations, like the development of the Race Relations Act in 1965 and the Equalities Act 2010, do you think they've had an impact on equality? Even though they've got these laws that have been developed, has equality in any way gotten better for people? Even though, and as a spin-off from that, the reason why critical race theory has emerged is because they feel that even though these things have been set down in law, there's still not much equality. And the last question was, we'll have a debate about this maybe next week or the week after. Has transgenerational trauma really affected black people?
Yes.
Well, it has. But we'll have a discussion about that next week. Thank you for attending. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Proud.